Hello, sixth grade. It's time for Blanket Bible Monday. Okay, so today we're going to pick up in the book of Numbers. If you remember, I told you the structure of the book of Numbers last week. It's structured around two censuses or numberings of the people. So that first census has already occurred. It's the census of the people who were with Moses coming out of Egypt through the Red Sea. Now they have taken that census and the cloud has lifted off the tabernacle, indicating that it's time for them to move. Remember, we talked about parallels between Exodus and Numbers, and there's a parallel of wandering in the wilderness. In Exodus, it's on the way to Sinai. Now in Numbers, it's on the way leaving Sinai. And in both of those periods of wandering, we know that there are going to be grumbling and rebellion from the people. Also, right before they left Egypt and started their wandering, in Exodus, they celebrated the Passover. In Numbers as well. They've just celebrated Passover, and now they're headed out into the wilderness. So that's where we're going to pick up today's story.
The departure from Sinai. It came to pass on the 20th day of the 2nd month of the 2nd year after the children of Israel had left Egypt, that the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle. So the children of Israel journeyed out of the wilderness of Sinai. The ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them to show them where they should stop. And the cloud came to rest in the wilderness of Paran, 3 days' journey from Mount Sinai. There the children of Israel complained again and said, "Who shall give us food to eat? We remember the fish which we did eat freely in Egypt. We remember the cucumbers and the melons, the leeks, the onions and the garlic. But now there is nothing but this manna for us to eat." Moses heard the people's cries, and the anger of the Lord was greatly kindled. Moses also was displeased, and he said to the Lord, "Why have you laid the burden of this people upon me to bring them to the land which you promised to their fathers? Where will I find food to give to all of them? For they are weeping and saying to me, 'Give us food to eat.' I cannot bear this burden alone. I pray you to kill me and save me from my misery." And God said, "Gather 70 men of the elders of Israel and bring them to the tabernacle to stand there with you. I will come down and talk with you there, and I will make them share the burden of the people, so that you no longer bear it alone. And say to the people, 'You shall eat meat, not for 1 day nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but for a whole month, until you are bursting with it and begin to hate it.'" Moses answered the Lord, saying, "The people number 600,000, and you have said you will give them meat to eat for a whole month. Shall the flocks be slaughtered, or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered so as to be enough for them?" And the Lord said, "Has the Lord's power decreased at all? You shall see now whether my words shall be carried out or not." Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders. And the Lord sent forth a wind and brought quails from the sea. He let them fall by the camp, about a day's journey on the one side, and about a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp. The people went out and gathered the quails all that day and all that night and all the next day. The least that anyone gathered was about a bushel. But even while they were eating the quails, the Lord struck the people with a terrible plague. Many of them died and were buried in that place.
So we have the story immediately, as soon as they're in the wilderness again, of the people grumbling and grumbling about food, missing the food, the cucumbers that they had in Egypt. And even more than that, disparaging the manna with which the Lord had faithfully been feeding them in the wilderness. And the anger of the Lord is kindled against them. We've talked about this before. What does that mean, the anger of the Lord? Because it's not God was having a good day until they grumbled and then he got really angry at them. It's teaching us that the people have rebelled against God. They've rebelled against the source of all life and goodness. And when you set yourself against the source of life, you're going to experience pain, right? When you set yourself against God, you're going to experience God's loving mercy as punishment. So maybe they were sick from eating too much quail. Whatever it was, it teaches us and teaches them that sin brings death, physical death and spiritual death, because their rebellion ended up in some of them dying.
The Israelites prepare to enter Canaan. The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Paran, saying, "Send out men to look over the land of Canaan, which I have promised to the children of Israel. Send a man from every tribe, each one to be a ruler among his people." Moses chose 12 men, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, saying to them, "Go up into the mountains and look over the land. See what it is like, whether the people who dwell there are strong or weak, few or many. See what the land itself is like that they dwell in, whether it is good or bad. See what their cities are like, whether they live in tents or in strong buildings. See whether the land is rich or poor, whether it has wood or not, and bring back some of the fruit of the land." Now it was the time for the first ripe grapes. So the men went out and searched the land. They came to a brook, and there they cut down a branch with a cluster of grapes on it. They carried it between them, slung on a staff, and they brought also some pomegranates and figs. They gave the place the name of Eshcol, meaning a cluster of grapes, because the grapes they had cut down there. They searched through the land for 40 days. Then they returned to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel, and brought word to them, and showed them the fruit of the land. And when the men returned, they said to Moses, "We came to the land to which you sent us. It is indeed flowing with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Yet the people are strong who dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very large. We saw the children of Anak there. The Amalekites inhabit the south, the Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites live in the mountains, and the Canaanites have the land by the sea along the river Jordan." Caleb, who had been among the men sent to spy out the land, silenced the people, saying, "Let us go at once and take possession of the land, for we are strong enough to overcome it." But the others who had gone out with him said, "We are not able to fight those people, for they are stronger than we." And they gave an evil report to the children of Israel concerning the land they had searched out, saying, "The land which we went to look over is a land that eats up its inhabitants. All the people we saw in it are men of great height. We saw there giants, the sons of Anak, who descended from giants. We looked like grasshoppers by the side of them." Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried. All the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron, saying, "Would to God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or that we had died in the wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us to this land to be killed in battle, so that our wives and children may be captured? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt?" And the people said to one another, "Let us choose a captain. Let us return to Egypt." Then Caleb and Joshua, who had also been with those who had searched the land, spoke to all the company of the children of Israel, saying, "The land which we passed through to look over is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land flowing with milk and honey. But do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they have no defense. The Lord is with us, so do not fear them." But the people threatened to stone them. And the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle before all the children of Israel. And God said to Moses, how long will this people provoke me? How long will it be before they believe me for all the signs which I have shown them? I will strike them with a plague. I will disinherit them and make a great nation of you alone. Moses answered the Lord, saying, then the Egyptians shall hear of it, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land, who have heard that you are the Lord of this people. They have heard that you are seen by them face to face, that your cloud stands over them, and that you go before them by daytime in a pillar of cloud and in a pillar of fire by night. If now you kill all this people, the nations which have heard of your fame will say, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land which he promised them, he has destroyed them in the wilderness. Now I beg of you, let the Lord's power be great, even as you have spoken, saying, the Lord is patient and of great mercy, forgiving sin and wrongdoing. Pardon, I beg of you, the sin of this people, according to the greatness of your mercy, as you have forgiven them from Egypt, even until now. And God said to Moses, because all those men who have seen my glory and the miracles I did in Egypt and in the wilderness have not listened to my voice, they indeed shall not see the land which I promised to their fathers. Say to the children of Israel, you who have murmured against me shall die in the wilderness. But your children, which you said would be captured, them I will bring to that land which you have despised. But as for you, you shall fall in this wilderness, and your children shall wander in the wilderness for 40 years, 1 year for each of the days spent in searching out the land. For 40 years I shall withhold my promise. And of the men whom Moses sent to search out the land, and who returned and made the congregation murmur against him by giving an evil report on the land, all except Caleb and Joshua died of a plague sent by the Lord. Then the people rose up early in the morning and went to the top of the mountain, saying, we are here, and will go to the place the Lord has promised, for we have sinned. But Moses said to them, you must not go up the mountain, because you turned away from the Lord. The Lord will not be with you. Yet some of them continued and went without Moses and the ark of the covenant, and they were struck down by the Amalekites and the Canaanites.
Okay, so let's take a look at what just happened in this story. Moses sends out 12 spies, 12 for the 12 tribes, 1 from each tribe, to spy out the land of Canaan, the promised land, so that when they finally enter the promised land, they have some idea of what to expect, what the land is like, who's living there. They know there are people living there, and that they'll have to fight some battles. So they want to know what they're up against. So the spies go and they spend 40 days spying out the land, and then they come back to report. And they report that it's a good land. In fact, they have this huge bunch of grapes that's so big they have to carry it on a pole between 2 guys. But the people there are very strong, large, giant people who make them look like grasshoppers. And most of the spies are of the opinion that it's going to be a tough battle and we better not risk it. This is not looking good. All right. But Caleb and Joshua say, wait, whoa, it's a land flowing with milk and honey. And God has promised us this land, and God has been faithful to us. God will fight the battle. Let's go. But the people, unfortunately, side with the other 10 spies, and they start to grumble against Moses and Caleb and Joshua. And they basically say, why did we come out of Egypt? It would be better for us to die here in the wilderness than to die in battle and have our children taken as captives. And God says, okay, die here in the wilderness, if that's what you want. But your children will not be taken as captives. Your children one day will enter the promised land. And, there's another beautiful scene where Moses steps up for the people, even though they've driven him so crazy he wants to die. He pleads to God, calls on God's covenant faithfulness, his loving, steadfast mercy, and that's God's answer. So in these two stories that we read today, we have a lot of grumbling and rebellion, and this people is so stubborn and so stiff-necked. But remember, whenever we see that, we need to look at ourselves and say, I'm stubborn and stiff-necked sometimes, right? How many times do I go to confession and confess the same sins? But I think this second story with the spies teaches us a very sobering lesson. It teaches us that you can say no to God so many times that becomes your final answer. You can say no to God so many times that God finally says, okay, have it your way. And that's not what we want God saying to us at the end of our lives, right? That's why there are people who go to hell, because they've said to God no so many times that has become their final answer to God. So I think that's the lesson that we learn from this story. So they're going to wander now in the desert until everyone from that generation except Caleb and Joshua have died. So there's a little bit we have some hope for the next generation. We'll see how that goes as we read through the rest of the book of Numbers. But for now, bad news for that first generation who saw so many of the wonders of God, who saw the plagues, the Red Sea, water from the rock, manna and quail, all these miracles, the way that God provided for them at every step. So maybe we could stop on that note and have all of us reflect on how God has always provided for us and how we need to respond in faith and trust. Because we know that God, in his steadfast mercy, will always be there for us. That's all for Blanket Bible Monday. See you next week.